to be able to come home and say, I have a better gratefulness, I have a better appreciation of all that I have because I can, I've seen something else. Just so we're just aware of the privilege that we have, that we're aware of all the resources that we have, I think is really important. But as you've gotten to, that doesn't make us happy. You know what I mean? The things that we have in general are not what bring happiness, and that's a great lesson that we can take from a lot of people in the majority world in developing countries. We can take the lesson that all of the things that we Westerners, that we Americans surround ourselves with, are not necessary to be happy. Happiness can come from a more inner place, like you said, from your faith, from your relations with other people, from your families. And that's something that I think we forget about sometimes in our go, materialistic, striving ahead all the time kind of world here in America.
Welcome to the One Pebble Podcast. Listeners, YouTube watchers, we are thrilled that you've joined us today. I'm excited to introduce you to a friend of mine that I have known well over 30 years. In studio today, we have Peter Carlson. Peter, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Peter has a huge heart. When I think of Peter, I think of someone who has thrown pebbles, sometimes boulders, into a pond or lake for decades. Peter has a heart of service. He cares deeply about people, and he has spent his whole life serving in capacities that I'm excited for him to share with you today. Before we listen to his story and his heart, let me read to you part of his bio. A native Minnesotan, Peter worked as a Lutheran church musician for 17 years before turning to a career in nonprofit management. He has worked with many amazing organizations here in Minnesota. He is well educated. He has many, many degrees, and we will put those in the show notes. Peter loves to travel, and he has always had special interest in international service programs. He has been to Africa several times, both as a tourist and with community development organizations. He is very passionate about how travel opens one's eyes to the human experience around the world, and he is honored to be a part of the important work at Give Us Wings. They serve the ultra-poor in Uganda, and he is their executive director. Before we hear from Peter, I have to say, first, when I think of him, I think of Wilmer High School. Peter was 1 year older than myself at Wilmer High School, and I always looked up to him. I remember him to be super talented. He's a musician. He is very kind with a heart of gold. I don't think he has an unkind bone in his body, and that's been part of his heart to give back and make a difference in the lives of others. I also have to say, I think of his dad. I think of his mom. I grew up at Vinci Lutheran Church, but our sister Lutheran church, Bethel Lutheran, his dad was a pastor there for 22 years, and his parents, an entire family, served the community so well that I grew up in. And now I watch him leading in the Twin Cities, Give Us Wings, flying across the world to help the ultra-poor. Again, with the heart of gold, Peter, we're thrilled. Thank you so much that you've said yes to being on the podcast today.
Yeah, of course. It's great to be here. Thank you for that really kind introduction. That was very nice.
You earned it.
Oh, thank you.
Tell us a little bit about growing up in Wilmer, Minnesota, and then take us down your path of education and being a musician, all of the years that you were, and just lead us to where you are now.
Sure, yeah. Wilmer was a great place to grow up. We moved here when I was in kindergarten. I guess it was a great place to grow up, although by the time I was in high school, I was ready to leave, like many of us are when we get into high school and think of our hometown as being a little bit square and a little bit small. So I was ready to go. But as I look back, it was a good place to be, lots of good attention from educators, lots of opportunities to do different kinds of activities, and a safe environment to grow up in. So Wilmer's a good town. It has a good place in my heart. And it's quite an experience to be back here to see what you're doing with his podcast. That's amazing. And to think back to like our trip to Florida on our band trip and all the crazy fun that we had. It's so neat to see you doing this and interviewing people and about the differences that they make in other people's lives is really admirable. So thank you for having me here. I hope that I live up to the experience. What can I say? So yeah, I was always very involved in the arts growing up, music and choir and theater and band, and did go on to college to be a music major. I majored in piano and in composition. And after college, moved on to a theater company out on the East Coast where I worked for a couple of years and also did some freelance composing. But it wasn't long before I realized that I was not a good freelancer. I like to know where my next paycheck is coming from. And so that kind of lifestyle was a little bit more nerve-wracking for me than I thought it was going to be. So I came back to Minnesota and eventually got a job at a church just playing organ and helping with the choir and things like that. And that turned into a career for me for 17 years. I went back and got a Master's of Sacred Music through Luther Seminary and St. Olaf College down in Northfield. And it was a really good experience for me. You mentioned my dad as a pastor. So I grew up as a pastor's kid. My grandpa was also a pastor. My great uncle was a pastor. So I did not expect to be working at a church when I grew up. It was just not what I was going to do. But sometimes life has other plans for you, and that's where I ended up. So really good experience. But after 17 years, was kind of ready to try something else, to get away from the schedule of working at the church, the evenings, the Sunday mornings, and all that sort of thing. So transitioned more into nonprofit arts management, management of arts nonprofits, and worked with a couple of organizations for a few different years, the Rose Ensemble and then Yellow Tree Theater in Osseo. And then the pandemic hit and the arts world kind of turned upside down. And at Yellow Tree Theater, I was the only employee for about a year. We had laid everybody else off. I was just kind of making sure that the building didn't fall in on itself. And then we went through the whole process of gradually opening up again and starting shows. And probably remember all that political nonsense about masks and proof of vaccination and how people were fighting all the time and accusing other people of, I got called a Nazi on the phone one time and all of these crazy things. So it was a lot. That was just a lot. And coming out on the other end of COVID, I think a lot of people, kind of took stock of where I was and thought maybe it's time for something else. So I just kind of looked around. And I happened to find an ad to be the executive director at this organization called Give Us Wings, which works with vulnerable families living in poverty in Uganda. And so I threw my hat in the ring, and it ended up being a really good connection. And so I feel like it was a bit of a jump. I don't feel like it was a bit of a jump. It was definitely a bit of a jump. But the skills from nonprofit management from one area to another certainly transferred. And it was just a different way of making an impact in the world. I always enjoyed being part of the arts. I think the arts has a big role to play in society for bringing people together, for allowing them to learn or to grieve together or to protest injustice and things like that. And so I just kind of switched over to a different kind of way of hoping to have an impact in the world. And I wasn't totally sure that I could do it. I wasn't totally sure I was the right person for it. I'm a middle-aged white guy in Minnesota. But during the interview process, it was one of those times when just a lot of different threads come together from your past and feels like you were in the right place. And I hope that everyone at Give Us Wings feels the same way. But it's now been 4 years, and it's been both the most challenging and the most rewarding thing that I've ever done. And so that brings me to today in a nutshell.
I will say, knowing your heart, you're the right guy all day long. They're so blessed to have you. And I've gotten to know Give Us Wings personally. We are a small donor of Give Us Wings, and professionally had the opportunity to be your auctioneer before. Mm-hmm. And with our family business, Flatabo Advancement, it's been a joy to partner. We know firsthand the critical work and the lives that you're changing, and you should be so proud of the difference you're making in this world. Something I really admire about you is you talk about your heart for travel and seeing the world and how it opens your eyes when you travel and see the world. And it just opens our hearts and eyes to how life is often so different. And something that's very important to you and I is preserving the dignity of people across the world, even if they have less, they're equally beautiful. It's hard to articulate for you and myself, I'm sure, having a love of going to third world countries, but how do you articulate your passion for travel and how that's shaped you, kind of seeing the world and opening your heart specifically to the people in Uganda? Mm-hmm. It's really hard to put in words, I know.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I've always loved to travel. I always have loved to see new places and to see what life is like in other places. I remember a friend in college one time said, "You're never happy unless you have like 2 trips planned out into your future," and that's always been the case for me. I sometimes wish that I did more of like connecting in the local communities when I travel. I'm not super outgoing in that way. You know, there are some people that they'll just travel and they just like get right on in the village and start talking to people. And I don't tend to do that. And so what has been really cool about this job is that it kind of has opened an opportunity for me to do that, to learn about another part of the world and to really learn about it, you know, to really live there for 2 weeks and be with people and have conversations and know what's happening in that one corner more than you can if you just sort of come in as a tourist. And I love being a tourist. I love visiting all different kinds of places. So that's not knocking that at all. But that's been for my own self, the perk of this job is to be able to do that and to feel like there's a part across the world, a part of the world on the other side of the earth that is like another little place where I feel at home, you know, and where I've made some real good friendships and all that. So that's kind of the personal stuff that goes beyond just the work that we do for families in Uganda and all that. But that's what's been really special for me. Yeah. So then, I guess what were you asking? You know, how do you talk about
I think for the
expanding
listener,
the heart, yeah.
They're let's say a listener is considering going to a third world country. Maybe it's on a mission trip or simply to visit. How would you encourage the listener as far as that opportunity to see the hearts of people across the world and how that plays into your passion?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would always encourage it. I guess I feel like there is so much that we have in America. There's so much we have in the Western world that we just don't. We might know it in our brains. We read books, you know, we were taught in history class, but we just don't quite realize just how fortunate we are, just how many things we have at our fingertips at any given moment, you know, and the ways that so many people in other parts of the world do not have that access. And I don't think that you can really understand that or really have your eyes open to it until you can actually see it and actually talk to someone who's been through problems and so or challenges or whatever. So that's what I think that travel to a developing country can really bring. And I think that's important because we, you know, getting into my, I guess, personal set of beliefs, but I think we have a responsibility to learn about our fellow humans on this earth and to not live in a bubble, but to be knowledgeable about all the different things that people face and to have opportunities to exchange experiences and get to know, I guess that, like you said from the bio, that human experience better. That's really important to me. And I think travel does that from a very simple trip that you take and you just get to see, oh, I didn't realize this is how they do things. I didn't realize this is what it's like when you are in a country that's, you know, surrounded by a really dry area or a country that's under the sea level or, you know, all these different kinds of things that you just didn't realize that was like. You learn that way. But then if you can go to a place where you get a little more exposed to the challenges that people face, to the struggles that people have, I think that's when your view of the world opens up a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You're correct. A year ago, my husband and son and I had the opportunity to spend some time in Uganda. And Peter, I left part of my heart in Uganda. A slice of it is there. I fell in love with the Ugandans.
Yeah.
I get a little bit emotional when I talk about it. You've been there many more times than I have, so I'm going to let you describe it. I'm going to give you the pressure to describe it versus me. I've only had one trip to Uganda, but something that stands out, it's just one example. The ultra-poor villages that we were in, carrying water, they carried it for sometimes 1 to 3 miles one way to a safe well, where more than likely they would boil the water and then carry it back maybe 1 to 3 miles. And we watched this. But then to sit down with those locals and to dig into their heart, of course, with translation, what stood out to me most, and I don't want to paint this with too wide of a brush, because I realize when you're often wondering where your next meal is coming from, that doesn't necessarily equate to joy. But what I'm always so humbled by, whether it's Uganda or the Philippines or Ukraine, the mission trips that I've been on my life, the one thing that I remember the most is their joy. Mm-hmm. And when I come home, I'm just quickly humbled. And I quickly remember, or try to remember, Christine, keep your heart in the right spot. Be grateful. They often have so little, but they have themselves. Sometimes they have faith, or maybe they don't. But a central theme for me, I'm sure it's not for everyone, but a ton of those people have joy. They're so grateful. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely. I think there is, I am not an expert on Uganda, and I'm certainly not an expert on any number of other countries where that suffer from deep poverty. But I do find in Uganda that there is a spirit of love of life. There's a spirit of hospitality and welcoming that is, lots of people are welcoming all around the world, but I think it's just a notch higher. They're just, the people are so loving when people come to visit, and so willing to share of whatever little they might have, which is great. I do think that it's tricky when we're doing this kind of work, or when you're on a mission trip or something, to kind of get this feeling like I should feel guilty, because I have all this, and then I come home and I shouldn't have all these things, and I think that's a burden that we don't all need to have. I think the inequalities in the world are there. They are what they are, and none of us are going to fix all of that in our lifetime. But to be able to come home and say, I have a better gratefulness, I have a better appreciation of all that I have, because I can, I've seen something else. Just so we're just aware of the privilege that we have, that we're aware of all the resources that we have, I think is really important. But as you've gotten to, it doesn't make us happy. You know what I mean? The things that we have in general are not what bring happiness, and that's a great lesson that we can take from a lot of people in the majority world in developing countries. Not to say that anybody likes to be poor, and I think that can be a little bit of a cliche. Sometimes you'll hear people say, "Well, they're so poor, but they're so happy still." They're always, and nobody likes to be happy on an empty stomach. Nobody likes to wonder where their next meal might come from, or to be sleeping in a hut that has a leaky roof or whatever. But I do think we can take the lesson that all of the things that we Westerners, that we Americans surround ourselves with, are not necessary to be happy. Happiness can come from a more inner place, like you said, from your faith, from your relations with other people, from your families. And that's something that I think we forget about sometimes in our go, materialistic, striving ahead all the time kind of world here in America. That's my opinion.
I couldn't have said it better. You just came back from a recent trip. Tell the listeners how many times you have been there. And we want to hear about your recent trip. What did you see? Any stories that you want to share? And I'll just tell you, when I was in Uganda, this is from Uganda. I had to wear it, spending time with you today. Those Ugandans, they can dance, they can sing. Their resilience, talk about the arts and your love of music, and they are spirited people. I just loved spending time with them. Share with us, if you will, about your trip and any stories that touched your heart.
Yeah, it was a great trip, as always. This was my 4th visit to Uganda as part of my work at Give Us Wings. So it's really good. I go about once a year, and it's really become now not just me going over there and trying to figure things out, but now I'm coming back into the neighborhood that I've learned about. I'm meeting people and seeing how they've, progressed over the past year, meeting our staff and maybe meeting a new child that that they didn't have a year ago when I visited or whatever. So it's really great. It's really great to be at this position now where I can come back and pick up where I left off a year ago. You're right. It is a spirited people. When I go out into the field and meet some of the community groups that we are working with, there's singing and dancing is welcoming me. It can be a little bit embarrassing, but that's how they do it, and that spirit is really amazing and really infectious. Even though I don't necessarily dance as well as a lot of them do. So what happened? It was a great trip. I think a real highlight of mine was visiting some of the new graduates from our program called the Community Youth Skilling Program. It's relatively new. We started about a year and a half ago, and that is a program that offers an opportunity for young women who have had to drop out of formal schooling for one reason or another, usually because they got pregnant or were kind of forced into an early marriage. And so we give them training through a community trainer in an area. We're offering 3 areas right now: hairdressing, tailoring, or baking. And so they get about 4 to 6 months of training. And then when they graduate, they get a package of supplies, and like the tailors get a sewing machine, the bakers get an oven, a bunch of things that they can use to start their own small business to make some household income. And we've had 44 graduates of that program, and every one of them is making some income from their enterprise, which is really, really exciting. And so I wanted to meet a lot of them and hear how things are going. And so it was really fun to hear those stories of how they're feeling like they have kind of a new opportunity, that they are finding ways to contribute to their household income, that they have kind of a newfound feeling of empowerment and respect from their husbands or their kids because they are, quote, contributing more now. Of course, they've been contributing all along as a wife and a mother, but now to bring in some financial income as well is really great. So a lot of good stories there. I think of one woman, I sent back a video that I took with her. Her name was Ada, and she just graduated from the baking program, but is off and running. She gave me a taste of some of her baked goods, and they were really delicious. And she has been working with her husband, and her husband's kind of a marketer for her, and he's been going out into different markets, and they decided that they would give out little free samples, which is a little, which sounds like kind of normal here, but that's a little bit of an unusual approach there in that community. And so, but whenever the shopkeepers taste the samples, she said they always buy some to sell at their shop. And it was really great to see the 2 of them together. In Uganda, unfortunately, we don't always see the husbands a lot. They tend to be off either working or looking for work, or sometimes they're just kind of absent. It's just, there's a lot of single women and women and grandmas taking care of kids and all that sort of thing. So them working together, and she said, I'm here, I'm making the goods, and then he's going out and kind of being my salesman for it. And they were definitely working as a team, which was really exciting to see. And I'm hoping that we can kind of use them as an example for other graduates from the program as well, and keep that impact moving forward. So that's a story that really stands out. I also met with a cooperative that we work with. We work with a few different agricultural cooperatives that have formed on their own and chosen an enterprise that they're doing. and they register with the government. This was years ago now for most of them. And then we've just kind of been going along with them as a partner, helping to get them some additional training if they need it, some connections to resources. And then lately we've been able to raise some money for some actual machinery. So whatever their enterprise is, their agricultural work, we can help them to do it a little more efficiently at a bigger scale, so that they can hopefully make more products and therefore make more money. And we've been working with a cooperative called Comcos for a long time. Comcos is an acronym for a bunch of really long words that we don't need to say right now. And they have finally found some really good success growing ground nuts, which is like peanuts for us. And they've been selling the nuts and growing more and getting more of a business going. And they put together a proposal that if they could make peanut butter with these peanuts that they grow, then the same amount of peanuts can be turned into a product that's going to get a lot more money at market than just if they were just selling peanuts. And so we just a few months ago delivered equipment that will de-shell the nuts and get the hulls off of it, and then roast it and then grind them into a peanut butter. And their business is just taken off. It was really excited to see them. I felt like there was this great communal spirit. Everybody kind of had their different jobs that they tend to do in the process of making this peanut butter, and then they put it together in these little bags and they bring it out into the neighborhood and sell. They keep some of it for their own consumption, of course, and then sell it at various markets. And apparently, word is it's just starting, but word is getting out that they're making this great product. And I think they have a good future ahead of them. So it was really exciting to see that and take a bunch of pictures of just how exactly it works that I can share with our donors back here in the States who have helped to raise money for that machinery, and to see that cooperation of them all working together and the pride that they have in this work and in this enterprise was really exciting to see.
Those are such impactful stories. I bet you have left part of your heart in Uganda as well. I'm sure it's hard to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
When you're there and you meet those people and you spend time getting to know them, and just, I'm amazed at humans. It's hard to say goodbye.
Yeah.
You do not have a prideful bone in your body. But when you got back on that airplane and as the executive director and seeing the work that you're doing and seeing the difference in the lives that you're making, what an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
Speak to that feeling.
Yeah, it's great to be a part of that. I feel very strongly that our work is community-led development. That's sort of the term for it these days, that we take our instruction from the community. They're the ones who have the wisdom and know what their true needs are. And so we work through our staff in Uganda. We have a staff of 15, all native Africans who are working in Give Us Wings, Uganda. And, my job is to just keep the boat running, and to fundraise here in the United States and to find other funders and other partners so that we can make that work. So, I try. You're very kind to say I don't have a prideful bone in my body, but we're human beings. We all have some pride. And I do think that I've brought a lot to the organization, and I'm happy to use the skills that I've been given and the knowledge that I've been given towards that. But I do try to temper that as much as possible and to kind of get out of the way. You know what I mean? I want to be a good administrator. I want to be a good leader as far as strategy goes and looking towards the future. But ultimately, I just want to be a channel, enable the resources to get to this area that needs them, because they already have the good ideas. They already know where they'd like to be. I would like to help provide access to the tools and resources that they need to get there, because it's just a part of the world that doesn't have access to the same amount of resources that a lot of other parts of the world do. Mm-hmm. But it is a great feeling to be a part of that, and it's always hard to say goodbye. We have kind of a tradition when I'm there, whenever our volunteer trips happen, that there's always a final night farewell dinner. which includes a lot of pork usually and a lot of chicken and a lot of really nice things. They're always so complimentary about all the things that Give Us Wings has done, and then a lot of dancing and fun. And so that's always something I look forward to. But of course, it's kind of bittersweet because it means it's the last night in Uganda.
Mm-hmm. Peter, I just want to again say how proud we are of you and the work that you're doing there. When I think of Give Us Wings, there's many arms to your organization. Part of it's you're working on health initiatives, you're working on education and all the stories that you've told. And you're coming alongside of families with your family to family program. And I'll often see those success stories that you share with people. And you are not able to measure those ripples. So we just want to encourage the listeners, whether it's with Give Us Wings or another organization, consider going and seeing the work and getting involved, and you will forever be blessed. Tell the listeners what your website is.
Yeah, it's just www.giveuswings.org.
Yeah. And if people want to consider partnering with you financially, you would welcome that and be so grateful. But just to get to know you better in the work that you're doing and to hear about it is exciting and makes a difference. Do you take people that ever want to go on trips with you to see the work?
Yes, of course. So if people were interested in supporting our work, there's of course a big donate button on the webpage. There's also information about becoming part of the Family to Family program, which you mentioned, which is a way that donors can get a little bit more intimately involved in the work and actually get connected to a family in Uganda. But then if you really want to get connected to the work, of course, we do volunteer trips about once a year. It's not on a regular schedule. It just kind of depends on when we have enough interest to put one together. And these are not trips that are necessarily roll up your sleeves or not, building a school or fixing a latrine or something like that. They're really just meant to be relational and educational, give people an opportunity. Certainly if they're donors of Give Us Wings, just to see firsthand the work that we're doing, but also just to have people, experience another part of the world, to understand what it's like there, to make some connections with those people and have conversations and an exchange of ideas and to learn, that we have a lot of things in common, even though our lives may look very different, in just that human experience again. So that's what we try to foster with the trips. We try to stay away from any sort of making people feel guilty, like I said, or any sort of poverty tourism or anything like that. It's really just for people who would like to learn and make some connections there. We're always happy to have visitors.
Uganda is a remarkable country.
Yeah,
and you guys are doing priceless work over there. I have to do one shout out to Katie Imholt, who has been on your board and been a fabulous auctioneer on our team for you. I'm just so proud of who she is. Yes. Betsy, who works tirelessly with your family to family programs. And again, you guys are making a difference in this world.
Yeah.
Peter, how has your faith throughout your whole life, again, I said it at the beginning, but when I think of you and have known you for all these decades, you're just a person with a servant heart. And we don't come with the 40-year roadmap. We just say yes to one thing and to another thing and to another thing. And that's just what you've done. You've continued to give back and make a difference in lives, whether it was your work at the church, being kind to everyone at Wilmer High School, and now your work at, us being in our 50s. How has your faith been a part of shaping your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, you're right that sometimes I feel like my life has taken a lot of twists and turns. I didn't necessarily have a strong goal and went right towards it. So
that's a compliment.
I'm experimenting.
It's a compliment.
I don't know. Yeah. I've experimented with a lot of different things, but I do feel fortunate that I've been able to do a lot of different things. And every twist and turn has been an educational experience for me and all that. So yeah, I think that, growing up in the pastor's family, it's sort of like faith is always there, but there's also kind of, at least for me anyway, and our family, not a dwelling on it, because then you would just be dwelling on it all the time. I mean, it wasn't like we went home and got a lot of sermons from my parents about how to be kind to people or anything. It was I think sometimes pastors try to make home life a little bit more normal, because a lot of people think, what's it like to have your dad as a pastor? Like, it must be so crazy or
what is that
a
like?
bummer or something like that. So, well, there's a lot of different experiences, of course, but for me, it was kind of like living in a fishbowl. You know what I mean? You have a lot of grandparents and aunts and stand-in parents in the church that are kind of always watching your behavior and seeing what you're doing, and you do sort of have this feeling like you're representing the pastor's family, and so sometimes that can be have some pressure to it. But I think my brothers and I were pretty good kids, so we didn't get in a whole lot of trouble. But anyway, all that's to say is that I don't know that I went into any of my work saying like my faith is driving me to do this. But now at this point in my life, I certainly can see some patterns. I mentioned earlier about how my belief in the arts as being a force for good in the world, even when there's a lot of bad things going on in the world. I think that was, I wasn't necessarily involved in Christian art, but I think that was
Sure.
a part of the way that I just believe we should be acting in the world. You know what I mean? Doing what we can to address these issues, and that was one of the ways that I felt to do it. I would say certainly now with my work with Give Us Wings, it's much more wrapped up in what I think personally about faith, what I think about justice and equality and things like that. And so again, Give Us Wings is not a religious organization. We're a secular organization. We don't do any proselytizing, or that's not part of our work. But certainly, I do feel called as a Christian to be, serving your fellow man and woman. And I don't think anybody can read the Bible and not feel like helping people who are poor, helping widows, helping people who have been suffering injustice or what have you. That's baked into the Bible. It's very obvious there. And so I think that the work that I'm doing at Give Us Wings and the work that many nonprofits like ours is doing is really important, and it resonates with me because of the way that I was raised, and because of the beliefs that I have, and frankly the examples that were given to me by my parents and my grandparents and lots of different friends and family members, and I try to live up to that as well.
You came from amazing stock. I know it firsthand.
They're pretty good, yes.
Really, really proud of your family and all the difference that they made in the community that you and I grew up in.
Yeah.
I want you to speak to fear. On the One Pebble podcast, we talk a lot about, and that's, again, the reason why you're sitting here. Your whole life, you've put courage ahead of fear. And you keep saying yes, and you let God direct you, and you're doing big things. How would you tell the listener, and there's no right or wrong, I think we're all a work in progress, but encourage the listener that might have, they're thinking of kind of their next move, whether it's kingdom work or whether it's just being kind to a neighbor or leading an organization, going back to school. The list just goes on and on. And I think oftentimes we think in life that we need to throw a boulder to make a difference. But if we all just keep stepping into pebbles and keep putting courage ahead of fear and just keep that one decision, one act of obedience, one act of kindness, that one decision to make a difference in the lives of even one person. Is there anything that you can share that's on your heart now at this age where you have put courage over fear and said yes professionally to some amazing things?
Yeah. I have a really long history of making decisions that for the next step in my life that then as it's about to start, I'm terrified.
Like starting a podcast.
Well, there you go.
Terrifying.
Right, exactly. And you think this is a great idea, and then you get to your first one, and you think, why did I ever think I should have done this? Right. So yeah, I mean, when the college that I chose, it was would have been very typical for me to go to a Lutheran school here in Minnesota, and I went outstate to a totally different school where I didn't know anybody, and because I thought I was going to be sort of unique and special, and then school started, and I was terrified. What did I do this? But of course, it worked out. And when I moved out east to work at a theater company, was really excited to do that. And then the day I left to drive out there, just completely terrified. Why have I done this? And some of that was with Give Us Wings as well. It was a big jump for me, like I said. And going the night before that first day at work, I thought, I don't know if I can even do this. Well, I could just fail completely. And so I totally know that feeling. And I don't know that I'm in any place to give advice to people, but I do think, it's rare that putting yourself out on a limb for something is a bad thing. It's usually is a growth thing. Maybe you'll fall or fail, but you're always going to learn, and I think and grow from it. And so that's what I've always kind of thought, and I guess that's why I keep doing these things that I get really scared of when I do them. But when you first said fear, and I thought about in my position right now, and a real fear that I have every day is, are we going to fail these people that we're trying to help? The support is still needed. We live and Give Us Wings on the generosity of many, many donors. You mentioned before, you said that you're a small donor, but truly, like, there's no small actors, only small parts. There's no small donors. I mean, it takes the village to do that work that we're doing, from all different kinds of people sharing of their wealth and their resources, which we really, really appreciate. But COVID was difficult. We're a small nonprofit. You're always kind of living on the knife's edge of the next big emergency, and so. Now that after all these years, we've invested in this community, we've seen so much growth and all that, and we're working towards self-sustainability, but we're not there yet. What if I'm at the helm and something falls apart? And that's something that I'm often fearful of, and it's both kind of tough sometimes, but it's also galvanizing to do the work that needs to be done. It's kind of prods me on. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that that living with that fear from a day-to-day place is not a bad thing, as long as it doesn't become too overwhelming. And I think it just reminds you of the work that still needs to be done in this world, whatever that mission is that you've identified for yourself. Hopefully everyone has identified some sort of mission for themselves. And so that keeps me going.
So well said and very inspiring. When I listen to you, I just hear your heart.
Thanks.
You have a huge heart. You are very musical. You're not going to talk about it because you're too humble, but I'm going to bring it up for you.
All right.
Don't hold back. Tell them a little bit about your talent, your education with music. You've said a little bit, your talent with music. You love music. You're super talented. Share more about that. I think music is a special part of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's always been a really special part of my life. I mean, music was a big deal in our family. All my brothers and I, we all took lessons on various instruments and sang in choirs, church choir, school choirs. It's always a big part. And also just basically singing at home, in the car, on vacation. We always did a lot of singing folk songs and with the family at Christmas time and all that kind of stuff. So music was definitely a big part of my upbringing, and I was fortunate enough to be able to make it part of my career as well. I am not a performer musician as much. I suffered from a lot of stage fright when I got into college, and kind of things moved up. The pressure, in high school was kind of fun and I liked doing it. And then college things just get a little more serious. And so I didn't thrive on that. Like some of my roommates in college who were piano performance majors or whatever, that just really thrived on that performance aspect of it, which is, I think, why eventually getting into church musician work was so great, because it was not so much performance as it was making music together. You know what I mean? Leading people in singing hymns at church and songs, and directing the choir. And I love choral music and the idea that a whole group of people becomes better than the sum of their parts. You don't have to have a whole choir of excellent solo singers to make a good choir. Everybody kind of lifts each other up. And so that was really meaningful work for me, and a lot of fun in that aspect of making music, as opposed to the more sort of classical concert stage, which I love to go to and listen to. But that was definitely not for me. So, and that translated then into when I did less of my own music and became just more of an administrator, but still to be a part of that work of creating something together, whether it was a play at the theater or a concert at the Rose Ensemble, creating this work together that you're sharing with other people was really meaningful. So that's I think what I love about music the most, is especially I've always liked the arts and museums and dance and a lot of theater, but music, making music together, I think has a power in it that's really special. It can be done without knowing the language that the other person has at all, as long as you know the piece of music that you're doing together. It can be done very simply in just together with your voice, or it can be done in a really elaborate way as an orchestra and a choir or something like that. But making music together has always been really enjoyable, and I do miss that. I don't do that nearly as much, except on a sort of an avocational standpoint or with friends singing show tunes or something like that. But so I do miss that part of the work that I did when I was in the arts.
And also be so proud of those 17 years at the church.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to ask you many questions about what you learned, what the parishioners were like. And I'm sure you heard endless compliments, but I love what you said, the sum of all of us together. How did you say that?
Yeah, choirs, they can be greater than the sum of their parts.
Yeah. That's so special.
Mm-hmm.
You already brought it up, but I wish I had a better memory. Some things I remember vividly, but you were a senior, I was a junior. We were with a huge group of people, and we were on the band trip to Florida.
Indeed,
and I remember it just being a blast. I have to come clean and tell you this. I don't know if you probably know this. I was like a D drummer. I wanted to be like an A drummer. You were an A at everything, and I was a D- drummer, but I aspired to be an A. Tell the listeners, it's fun to hear about your life, what you like to do in your free time.
So, we've obviously talked about travel. That's a big deal for me. We talked about my interest in the arts. So I do a lot of going to concerts and going to theater. Love New York City. We go to New York quite a bit and see as many shows as we can. So that's a big priority for me. And what else? We have a cabin up in northwestern Wisconsin, which we love to spend time up there. It's been a really great place to be together with friends and family, kind of in the nature of the beauty of nature, and spend time up there. So that's really great. And I'm also a huge Disney World fan. Speaking of our trip to Florida, bring that up. Did you not know that? Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
I love the Disney theme parks.
Okay.
Just last fall, I got to go to Tokyo Disneyland for the first time, which was really great.
Sure.
To see a Disney park in another country. So I try to get to Disney at least once a year or so.
That's so fun.
And that was probably started. It wasn't my first. I think it was my very first trip with the band in high school to go to Disney World.
Wow.
So started way back then.
Such good memories, and a shout out to Wilmer High School.
Mm-hmm.
We have really good memories. It was a special place.
Mr. Choco, Mr. Brow.
Incredible people. Matter of fact, they played that band at our wedding.
Oh, did they really?
And so just, I see them from time to time in the community, and really proud of who they are.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I didn't know that you love Disney, and to go to Tokyo Disney, that's incredible.
Yes.
Sometime you'll have to go to Hong Kong Disney. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make my 14th trip 13th or 14th trip to Hong Kong for
really?
an auction
Wow.
this fall. And I've never once been to their
Not
Disney,
been to
but
Hong Kong?
you just
You may
inspired
need
me.
to do that. Well, send me a postcard if you do go.
I will do that. This has been so fun, delightful. You've educated us. You've inspired us. You've most definitely encouraged us, sharpened us to be better people. I'm a really big believer. Iron sharpens iron, and that's who you are.
Well, thank
That's
you.
who you've always been, and that's who you are. Super proud of you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for this.
Well, I've got
this
one
work
more
that you're
question.
Doing. Yeah.
No pressure. It's a 2-part question, and you don't have to have an answer, but do you have any aspirations or goals? Recently, I did a podcast with my kids, and we talked about New Year's resolutions, which sounds kind of silly, but again, back to the One Pebble podcast, I think we have a lot of fun. We laugh, we cry. We're just trying to sharpen each other and go through life encouraging each other together. Is there any New Year's resolution or aspiration? It can be short-term or long-term that you're publicly willing to share, that you're excited about, that would sharpen us? And then anything else on your heart that I didn't ask you that you would want to say, just from an encouragement standpoint from the listeners. But this has been a joy and an honor, and feel really blessed to have had you with us today.
Well, thanks. I did want to go back actually, because I there was something I wanted to say when you were talking about fear, and the fear that I have about, keeping our work going and making sure that we keep our commitments to the people in Uganda and all that sort of thing. And I think that your idea of the idea behind this podcast of One Pebble, and I think that allays my fear sometimes, is that I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I just have to trust that the things we're doing right now, they're making an effect that we see immediately, but I hope that there's going to be effects way down the road, even if for some reason we had to go away, even if we had to change our programming, or who knows what the future might hold. I hope that those seeds that we're planting and those pebbles that we're throwing are there's still going to be things happening in the future. And I think that does make me less fearful sometimes when I get in those down places. So I just want to say thank you for this work that you're doing. I hope that people are getting that message in all of your podcasts as you talk to different people, and I hope they're hearing that inspiration.
So kind. Thank you.
So a New Year's resolution or an aspiration. I am not very good. This is another thing I was going to say. So, we should just keep talking because I'm remembering all the things that I was going to say. And so when I am in Uganda, I am always interested in how time happens there. It's just a much slower pace. People are much more patient. If there's a meeting, people come a little bit later and no one's really upset about it. They're just kind of hanging out waiting. And I am drumming my fingers on the table because I am, Northern European and live in a big city in America. And I'm always, time is money and want to move forward. And so that is probably never going to change. I'm not going to change the way that I am, but there is something to be learned from that about just taking a breath and not being worried about packing every moment of the day with whatever. And I think that I don't always, in my job and in my personal life, I'm always trying to accomplish things. I've got lists all the time, always trying to mark things off the list. And I'm trying to be better about carving out some times to just think, to just, mostly from a professional standpoint, but I could probably use it in my personal life as well, to just be quiet for a minute and allow things to come into my mind without forcing them or without saying, I got to figure this out right now, or I have to do this. I started a little bit last year, but that continues to be a goal of mine this year. And I think I can take Ugandan time as a little bit of a lesson on that, and just not be ruled by the clock quite so much, and be able to just be with myself once in a while.
That's said so well. And we experienced that firsthand, Ugandan time, and we could take a lesson from that. We are
indeed.
Like you said, I think it's important that we're on time. That's a part of our culture, but maybe that shouldn't be so important. Maybe we should talk an extra 5 minutes at the grocery store. That is also something I'm working on. I just said recently on a past interview with a guest that speed is one of my sins. I go through life too quickly. I don't feel motivated by money, hopefully. Hopefully I'm not motivated by pride. As you said, we probably all have a slice of pride, but kind of seizing the day. I try to seize the day to a fault.
Yeah.
And I'm really working at, I'm not doing very good at this, Peter, but I'm really working at trying to slow down and be still. Listen for those next pebbles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
No,
That's an amazing reminder.
I think that's something we all could do a little more of.
Well, I want to tell you, I know it from the bottom of my heart. You being the executive director at Give Us Wings and your amazing team, many of the people that I know, trust me, when you lay awake at night, you are making a profound difference. You will never be able to measure your ripples.
No,
Receive that. It's the truth. This has been a joy. Blessings to you beyond measure.
Thanks, you too. It was so great to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
me. It's meant a lot. Appreciate it. This has been the One Pebble Podcast. One pebble, so many ripples. What will you do to make a difference?